Good to go. Good evening, and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of October 15th, 2024. As a reminder, the municipal election is this Saturday, October 19th. You may vote early using telephone or electronic voting, in person on Saturday at the Kentville Fire Hall, and we do ask that you please vote. The meeting is being live streamed on Town of Kentville YouTube channel, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting package? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As the Council Advisory Committee, CAC, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. Members of council should be mindful of their decision-making wheel to make balanced and respectful decisions while adhering to the Code of Conduct. The council will be voting electronically on all motions except administrative, which will be done by show of hands. Are there any conflict of interest issues that council should be aware of before the meeting commences? The chair notes that we have quorum. We have been provided with the proposed agenda. CAO, do you have any changes for the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, there is one change. It involves in camera. I'd like to replace 10A, land, with 10A, labor.
Thank you. Are there any further additions or deletions to the agenda? At this time, I would accept a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Zabian, thank you. Councillor Huntley for the second, thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. We have one set of minutes for approval this evening. The Council Advisory Committee meeting of the 9th of September 2024, and the minutes have been distributed for your approval. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red, and the annotated minutes will be added to the electronic file as approved. Are there any changes? No changes? All good. We have no presentations this evening. That brings us directly to our department reports and recommendations. The directors have provided their reports for council review and will provide an update and receive questions from council. The reports will be presented and are part of the record of this meeting. Only items of new business arising from the reports will be taken for motion. CA Lawrence, could you please introduce your department reports and recommendations?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would ask Director Rwanda Matthews to present the finance report.
Everyone. Ooh, it's on now. Okay. My report has been circulated. I wanted to go through just a few of the highlights. In particular, you will note that I have provided a fair bit of detail around our compliance reporting for both the Utility Review Board as well as Municipal Affairs and Housing, just to ensure that you are aware that we have met those requirements. They do have an impact on our ability to get debt and other things, so those are in advance of the due date. From a financial point of view, you will note that I have talked about detransfer tax the last 2 months. I haven't provided any financials. We have had no transfers to our bank accounts yet, but we have been given access to get reports to see what the revenue may look like. And so far, what has been reported is probably in the 50 to 70,000 range, but a lot of it depends on the timing of when a contract was entered into and where it is now. So hopefully at the end of October, we will get a report and see funding starting to transfer. We also have included the statement of operations. The statement of operations does have within it a surplus of $5,852,329, which is fairly consistent with where we would anticipate to be. You will note that our final tax has been levied, and that is embedded in these statements. It's $13,276,955. It is less than our budget. We did have some appeals that brought the numbers down for both commercial and residential, and we'll do a bit of a deeper dive in the next month to just see where some of those big differences lie, but we do know that we did have some appeals that were significant to bring those down. We also, I wanted to highlight that from an accounting point of view, on the revenue side, you'll see financing from reserves. We have recorded $60,773 of the almost $295,000 budget. Certainly. Revenue, what we are doing is those specific, if you recall, when we approved the budget, we said there were specific expenditures that were one-time this year that we wanted to move funding into offset from our reserves. Last year, we had a surplus, so it was utilizing that surplus for these kind of carryover items like stormwater management and the arena facilities assessment. So we are actually matching the recording of that revenue to when we spend the money. So as those expenses are coming through, those will be in through transportation services or recreation. We will be recording the reserve to come in to bring it to zero. So it's not creating a timing issue of a surplus now when the expenses are coming in later. Those are just going to match for you. And so you will be able to see that grow as those expenditures grow. I also wanted to note that on the expense side, the transfers to reserves, you'll see most of those transfers have occurred. The only one that has not moved forward is there was if you recall, a $38,000 amount that we included in the budget related to an increase in reserves for Kemple Police Service. That was being funded by excess back check revenue, and you will note that we've highlighted our back check revenue is down about $16,000 a month. So we have chosen not to do a transfer to surplus until we see where that lands at year end. Other than that, most of the items on the statement of operations are fairly normal course of business for timing of where we are at the end of August.
Thank you very much, Director. Council, are there any questions for the Director on this report? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Matthews, when the appeals are done through PVSC, and I know you had said that they were, some of them were significant, is there a maximum when people appeal?
That's not a question I know the answer to.
Okay. I'm just wondering, like, if somebody appeals and says their assessment is 100,000 too high or something, like, can it be 100? Can it be 200? Can it be, like, is there a ceiling on it?
Jeff may know. I don't believe that there is, but.
Yeah, through you, your worship,
Yes.
there wouldn't be. You
No.
could have a large commercial
Yeah.
property that would have a substantial reduction, or a large residential.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
MPVSC will make that decision on how it looks, and I know we have one in particular that was multiple hundreds of thousands, so.
Is that
in
right?
commercial.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions for the Director?
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. I'd ask
welcome.
Director Shoup to come forward and present the planning and development report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A little more of a report this time. We've got Ben Kroll working with me and working with us on providing some of those reports on permits that we've had in the past. We're still getting up to speed overall, but at least we're able to provide a comparison with where we were last year. September was an interesting month in that we were in transition from the development officer through the consulting service to an in-house development officer. So that's partially why the reason why there's only one development permit that's reported. Ben's playing catch up a little bit, so he's getting there, and we should you'll see a little bit of an elevated number for October based on that. Overall, of course, you all remember that September was a busy month for approvals of development applications. So site plan approval for Ryan's Park and the Bryson appeal, as well as the Bryson more recent application for Kentville Crossing, were all moved forward. And we have the amendments to the planning documents that are being submitted to the minister for final approval. Currently, that can be up to 90 days, depending on whether or not he needs any more information. but those amendments are on the way. I've kind of mentioned this in the overview, that between those three developments, that means a significant amount of new development over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, whether it's hundreds of units or into the thousands, depends on the pace on which they do construction. But there's some significant thought process that we're, as a department, considering in terms of how we consider priorities, and the secondary plan will be part of that as we look at that in the new year. And as well, having them matching the policies and the processes that can carry that work forward from the town. So that's partially what I'm thinking about and what we're thinking about as a group. On the community and economic development side, Lindsay has been busy as well, and she provided her background on, it's a heavy marketing season. The VIC closed over the last, I think it's a couple weeks ago now. What else do we have? The new tables for Center Square, we have them. We're looking to get them installed in the near future. She mentions hoping to have them ready for holidays in November. Of course, the Pumpkin People Festival is well underway, and the Pumpkin Walk is this weekend. And that's just sort of the overview for now.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions for the Director with regards to this report? They're letting you off easy.
Okay. Thanks very much.
I'd ask the Director of Recreation, Craig Langill, to provide the report for Recreation.
Hello, Mayor and Council. So I just want to highlight a couple areas within our monthly report. Under grants, we had one successful grant application for capital, which is for the shade structure at the skate park. And then we had one for operating, which was $25,000 from Communities Culture, Tourism, Heritage. That's through the Active Communities Fund, and that's in partnership with the province. We have that position within our department that is partially funded by the province. So that was a full ask for $25,000, and we were awarded with the full $25,000. And that's going to go towards free access to programming throughout the year for our community members. The next line item is provincial awards. I just wanted to highlight that myself and Roxy Peterson will be in Antigonish tomorrow at the provincial recreation conference, and we'll be accepting 2 different awards. I'll be accepting on behalf of the advisory committee, the Connecting People with Nature Award, and that's for the hemlock conservation piece that we've been tackling for the past year, and we'll be tackling next year as well. And the other award that Roxy will be accepting on behalf of the town is the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Access Award. And that's just looking at his position being implemented by the town and the impact he has had on the town and within the community. So those are two awards that we'll be walking home with tomorrow and bringing back to the town. On the other page, I just wanted to highlight that capital work has started by the Annapolis Valley Mountain Biking Association. This is in partnership with our Capital Trail Connector piece that Council had approved. And there's going to be trail access from West Main all the way up to the school. So it's a great piece to keep kids active, getting to school, getting home, and it's just a different piece than the Harvest Moon Trail for getting from point A to point B. And then finally, just wanted to highlight the upcoming events for October. So Harvest Fest was successful on October 5th. Not sure how many people were able to get down to the Thanksgiving Filipino Fiesta yesterday. Another great event. And then for all pumpkin people related information, you can go to kempville.ca/Pumpkin People Festival. So that's where you'll be able to find out more about our game night scavenger hunt that's happening from October 5th to 27th. As well as the Oakdean Park Halloween Scavenger Hunt. So that's being hosted by the Oakdean Park Community Garden Group. So it's another great activity for the families. Any questions?
Councillor York.
Thank you. Not at all questions, but please pass along our thanks to Jerry for the work that he's done on the Pumpkin People so far, and congratulations on your awards. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Councillor Huntley.
Almost same message, really. Congratulations to your department on the 2 grants and the 2 awards. You make us proud, your department, so thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Director. Good evening, Director. It's been one of those days. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Annapolis Valley Mountain Biking Association. As some of us have had the opportunity on the campaign trail, we've had the opportunity to chat with Lorenzo, who I think is sort of the spirit behind that association. So I'm just wondering kind of how that interfaces with recreation right now and where you sort of see that going.
Well,
That's a very general question, but yeah, just general is fine.
I would say Lorenzo and the Annapolis Valley Mountain Biking Association will be involved in the future for how we look at mountain biking in our community. Not only in our community, but there is some traction between ourselves, New Minas, and Wolfville, and making a connectivity across the three towns, municipalities. So Lorenzo has been quite helpful in hosting national events that we hosted the past few years, as well as bringing forward some of these great initiatives with creating trails within KCA. So I would say there's definitely future conversations to be had. I can't speak for what they want to accomplish in the long term, but for us, it's definitely a short-term need with their fulfilling.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director? No questions here.
Thank you. I would ask the Chief of Police, Marty Smith, to present the police report. Recreation's a tough act to follow, isn't it?
Always, yeah. Yes, congratulations on the awards. It's well-deserved. Good evening, Deputy Clerk, Councillors, CAO, and Mayor Snow. I'll be providing you some information on I was speaking with the Deputy Clerk today thinking, because I'm all mixed up with the summer months and because I'm always behind. So August is what you should have a report on, I hope. Because I haven't presented September to the board yet, so I can't present it to you guys until I present to the board. So August was a very quiet month for us with no training at all. Actually, we were quite low with training. Calls for service were pretty high again in August. Our numbers were up in the foot patrol stuff around downtown, and again, as always, they seem to be putting a lot of time in downtown, which is the main priority. Meeting-wise, it's usually pretty much the same. Summer months are a little bit slower, but we had chiefs meetings, executive leadership. DOJ had released policing standards, so we had some meetings and discussions on those. And I think I mentioned it last time, but I attended the graduation for Cadet Heather Campbell that has started with us as of September 3rd. Our navigator was busy in August. 55 meetings, 17 agency meetings, 14 referrals, and her months are pretty consistent with referrals and calls. Our budget as of the end of August was just below where it needed to be overall, higher in some places, but overall just below where we needed to be. That's pretty much it, unless anybody has any questions, which they usually do.
All right, Chief, thank you very much for that. And we do have questions. Councillor Huntley.
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
Looking at the crisis navigator work that's
Yep.
been done, obviously she's really busy.
Yep.
How is she?
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
So in all those meetings that she does, how many hours is she putting in the week?
You mean work-wise with us? So she's working a full week.
What do you call full week? 40 hours?
35.
35.
Yeah,
Okay.
35 hours a week.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they get paid for.
Yes, okay,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, sort of to dovetail off what Councillor Huntley said, the Community Crisis Navigator. Will it be your intent to secure a second position in next year's budget?
It's been discussed with the board, and I do believe that is our intent. It will be my intent
Okay.
to put it forth, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Councillor York, as the chair of the Police Commission, do you have anything to add to the chief's report or anything from the commission?
Sure. So as the chief alluded to, we haven't met. We meet tomorrow. So there's nothing from that perspective. But I did want to acknowledge that we attended the Long Service Awards that were earlier this week, maybe last week. We're only Tuesday. It was last week. Listen, it's been a day. They were last week, and it was wonderful to see and celebrate those officers who have 20-plus year service. It was fantastic. But then also to see and welcome all of the new officers who won't be going anywhere anytime soon, and to see the visual representation of the work that you and Deputy Chief Reid have put in to making sure that we have a full complement. So while I want to extend and reiterate our welcome and thanks, I also want to thank you and Deputy Chief Reid specifically for the amount of time and effort it takes to get that group of people where they were. So thank you, and thanks to them.
Thank you. It was a great event, great attendance to the event. It was, yeah, it was very strange standing up there introducing 7 people to an 18-member police service. So, but yeah, we have a great group. To also mention, as you alluded to, Constable Ryan Mason would have received his long-term service award for 15 years, and Sergeant Kevin Lutz for 25 years. So yeah, congratulations to them. It's a long time in any career. But yes, it was a great event, and I hope to never introduce that many people again.
Good. Thank you, Chief Smith.
Thank you.
Director Bell, if you want to present the Engineering and Public Works report, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My report's very similar to last month's report. Just a little update on the different categories. Water Commission, I mentioned last month, we are in the first year of our proposed multi-year residential water meter replacement program. It's about to start this fall and be completed ideally before the calendar year ends in December. So we will be focusing this year on sort of areas that are in the most urgent need of new replacement meters, the Meadowview area of North Kentville, Belcher Street, West Main Street, the lower part of Prospect Avenue, McDonald Avenue, Henry, and Braeside Drive. These areas are being notified now by the meter company. The company that was successful in the tendering process is Neptune Meters. So we're going to put some information on our socials just to let folks know that they'll be receiving contact from the meter company, and that it is, it is legitimate. They have everything on our letterhead and their own, and their plumbers will be coming to individual homes to change out meters in the coming months. We anticipate this program will take about 5 years to fully replace all of our old meters, doing anywhere from 400 to 500 a year over the next 5 years. These manual meters that we are taking out and being replaced with ultrasonic radio meters are much more accurate, and now we'll be able to read true quarters without the time-consuming manual reads that we were only doing twice a year. An update on the regional force main replacement project that's being managed by the municipality of Kings. It's well underway, as I mentioned last month. A few stalls as of late down on the sort of the marsh area next to the trail. They finished certainly the area on Klondike Street and are just about to reinstate the curb and pavement there. So it's about a third installed at the moment, 500 meters of the 1,500. And if they get the other permits from Environment, they'll be able to do the rest before winter freeze up. An update on the Stormwater Master Plan. As I reported last month, the town-wide Stormwater Management Master Plan or study was awarded to Dillon Consulting Limited, and our Engineering and Public Works Department has had 2 meetings with them so far to kick off the project, and we will be scheduling a public information session later this fall, most likely at the fire hall. Staffing-wise, under Manager of Public Works, this position is being created this year, was approved at budget time last spring. This is a position that will replace the senior lead hand position held by Richard Boyd for nearly the last 30 years as he prepares for retirement. So applications closed last Friday, and we received several applications, and we're reviewing those now to shortlist them and move into interviews for that position. Under projects, our capital works projects, most of the projects are either complete or well underway. Same ones that I mentioned last month that are complete, as in McDonald Avenue subdivision, top lift of paving, the Elm Street sewer replacement project's now complete. Belcher Street sidewalk is now complete. Our equipment purchasing for the year is complete, and the downtown AT sidewalk project is complete with just a few minor deficiencies. The other big one under construction is the Condon Avenue and Park Street storm sewer project. The storm pipes, as of last Friday, are now all fully installed, and yesterday's heavy rain or thunder showers were a good first test for the new system. I visited the new outfall around 5 p.m. yesterday after several hours of heavy rain, and the outlet was performing as expected with a nice wide, low-level fanned outlet dispersing the energy to the trail ditch. And those are the highlights of my report.
All right, thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions for the Director? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Director. I asked a question at one of the public meetings, and I was told it was not germane to that, but since we're at a CAC, hypothetically, Condon Avenue, or futuristically, the stormwater management plan, if something, so for example, if Condon Avenue doesn't work, and I'm being very skeptical, but over the years, they've tried several things up top, they've tried new pipes, nothing worked. If what we've done on Condon Avenue creates a mess on West Main because we're putting more water further back, what is the accountability? Where does the town lie with accountability?
The town hired engineers to design the system. The replacement of this second phase of the system, the storm pipe that were installed this year, are the sort of the second phase of the pipe project that was started, as you know, 5 years ago, replacing the undersized pipe on Condon Avenue, and now completing the project, the pipe portion of the project from Condon at Park through the park shed to the outfall. So that also picks up another very large outlet that always went to the ditch, being the gorge outlet that comes down next to Gladys Porter Drive. That water goes through that controlled outlet now and fans out. Yesterday, literally, with all that rain we had, there was about 2 inches of water fanned out in a very dispersed, energy dispersed outlet. So it certainly was working as expected. Other parts that will come out of the stormwater master plan and the designers that are working, have done the Condon part of the project, are also looking at upstream things just south of Condon, most likely, a stormwater management area, essentially at the end of Parkview, where it's, before it gets super steep, there's an area there that we're looking at stormwater management ponds for, but, the liability, if that's your question, Councillor, lies with, the designers, and I don't know what else to add to that besides that.
Okay, no, that's what I was looking for. And in 2019, because I asked the question, the fix for Condon Avenue was putting in the new pipe. It wasn't, we weren't told, or at least the previous council wasn't told, that this is a plan, or a 2-phase or 3-phase plan where it's going to start at the top of Condon and then end up down at the river. Because I asked, is changing this pipe on Condon Avenue going to fix the problem on Condon Avenue? And we were told yes.
The section of pipe that runs along Park Street from the east end of Condon to essentially to the Little League ball field, isn't capable of handling that runoff with the intensities that we're having today. You know, it had, you know, occasional events. 2015 is the last one that or the first one that I remember, but I'm sure there were more prior to that. They've become more and more frequent, and you know, there are no undersized pipes in that system. The pipes are sized to handle the 100-year runoff from that catchment area. There are events that are more than 1 in 100 years, so that's what they would have to have if we're looking for an upstream stormwater management area to attenuate any higher flows than what would be seen in a 1 in 100 year storm. So the pipes are all sized for that now with the different slopes. The 36-inch pipe on Condon that was put in 2019 at the grade it's at, and the 48-inch pipe at the flat grade that's now under Park Street as of last week, and the larger outlet to the pond or to the ditch on the Harvest Moon Trail that picks up now 2 flowages to eliminate old failing systems that went to the same trail before.
And one last thing. Water, I don't think, is the issue.
It is when we get the kind of rain that we get, yeah.
But it's the debris, like especially on Condon, it's not the water, it's the debris, it's the rock, and it's the sticks and the trees and stuff that come downhill.
When, you know, the grate is certainly holding the rocks and things back, but yes, that's why we would want to see a stormwater management area upstream, is to do 2 things, to allow the larger debris, not the silt, but the larger debris. And it's debris, it's saying debris is usually thought of as organic. This is, for the most part, large rocks that have been under, you know, feet of glacial till for thousands of years. And, you know, the amount of rain and water that we've had these last several storms in the last 5 or 6 years have opened that gorge up to a much deeper ravine than it ever was. And you know, once that energy unearthed nature's cover on those rocks, now they do continue to come down. You are correct there, and that's why a stormwater management area is certainly the next phase. But hydraulically, these pipes will handle the flow that they're designed to handle.
Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. I'm hoping you can pass along my thanks and congratulations to Richard Boyd on a wonderful career. He was one of the very first friendly faces I met here when I started at the town, and his is one that I'll miss dearly seeing around. So please pass along my best wishes and congratulations on a career well had.
I will, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Huntley.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you about replacing the residential water meter program. I know it's over 5 years, and I think you and I have chatted about it before, but it was way back when I was first new. But I guess one of my questions was, because a lot of them, they're older and they need to be replaced, so am I right in saying they're not giving us accurate reads? And in saying that, just wondering, did we lose much in revenue?
When
I know it's a guess.
Yeah, it's a good question. When mechanical meters age, they always slowly degrade, essentially in the water user's favor. So they never read high as they age. They always read low. A mechanical meter wears and reads low. These meters most of them are 20+ years old, and there's been advances, you know, every decade or so. We switched probably 10 years ago to radio reads, but they were still a mechanical meter. Now we've switched to a non-mechanical ultrasonic meter that is radio, has a little radio in there, so the guys, when they read, they don't have to get out of the truck and go to everybody's sort of front door to that little black box in the front of the house and touch that read. So, you know, they can be done, probably the entire town could be done in 2 days, as opposed to weeks when they do them on a semi-annual basis. But certainly, we will see more accurate reads. I don't anticipate a great increase in revenue. Where we really see the difference are on the large users, the commercial industrial users. Like we replaced meters last year, 2 at the hospital and one or 2 out in the business park. And even though those installations may have been several $1,000s, they would pay for themselves in the first quarter alone in the increased revenue. And water is one thing. We sell water by the 1,000 gallon. We also charge our sewer, our wastewater revenue is collected on that same basis. So based on the water meter. So it'll help the water or the wastewater sanitary sewer area service revenues as well, because we charge a gallon in as a gallon out.
Okay. And what would a cost be of a meter?
The me-
$500-600?
A meter, yeah, we buy them for roughly $600 now. They used to be a quarter of that.
Yes.
But like everything, they've gone up, not just double or triple, but in this case, almost 4 times in the last 10 years. Technology's changed, but we pay about $600 per meter. On a larger quantity that we're doing now, we're getting them somewhat cheaper than that. Even installed, they're being installed for about the same price that we would buy them for normally. So that's a big help. So we're able to do 100 more this year than we anticipated and still be on budget.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Bell, the public information session that's going to be held later this fall with regards to the stormwater master plan. Does that look like an information session with questions to be asked, or will there be some sort of a public participation meeting at any point, or will it just be more of a session to provide information to residents?
It's going to be a fact-gathering session, I think, really for the consultants that are doing the study. We'll have some maps maybe on the wall around the fire hall, if that's the venue that we end up choosing. My project engineer, Ahmed Kadre, has been working with the consultants quite closely and working on some formats and what we want to do for this session, and try to get a date set after the new council is all settled in. And I would think it would be sort of the latter part of November, but we'll make sure everybody has lots of notice and it's well publicized. But that's what I see now is there being, some maybe breaking down different parts of town onto different maps around the fire hall auditorium, and able to sometimes we discussed, we've met with several folks around town over the last number of months about stormwater issues or concerns, and some folks have said, well, I'm going to maybe come on behalf of my area and sort of speak, and that's not not required, but it might be it might be a good format to have, rather than to have lots of people sort of focusing on one area, to have a few representatives for certain areas of town that have specific concerns. But certainly everyone will be welcome to the meeting, and we'll have more details in the coming few weeks, we'll say.
Okay, thank you. And to echo what Councillor York said, also please pass my best wishes along to Richard as well. It's a great loss for us to lose him. So thank you.
Well-deserved retirement, for sure.
Are there any further questions for the director? CEO?
Thank you, Your Worship. You'll note that the CAO report is a little different format tonight. It includes a section for the Deputy Clerk and Strategic Initiatives Coordinator and what those activities are, to make sure Council's aware. For myself, we'll be updating Council on the negotiations with the Police Association in the in-camera session. Attended the Association of Municipal Administrators Conference, and as well met with various stakeholders and various issues, and worked with directors on a number of initiatives that they talked about today. Deputy Clerk's activities are listed. Strategic Initiatives Coordinator will be speaking to most of her topics later in the session. A special tip of the hat to the Deputy Clerk and the Strategic Initiative Coordinator for their efforts in promoting the election, get out and vote, and then also putting together what I would say is a very robust orientation session. I know when this council was sworn in, unfortunately, it was during the time of COVID, and so there was limited opportunities for that sort of orientation session. The Strategic Initiative Coordinator and the Deputy Clerk have met with internal and external stakeholders with regard to environmental initiatives, and also have assisted the, and I want to make sure I get this right, Diversity and Belonging Task Force on some of their initiatives. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If they're specific to the Deputy Clerk or the Strategic Initiative Coordinator, I may turn it over to them for a response.
Other questions for the CAO? Man, they're letting you skin out
I know, I
easy
feel
tonight.
bad sometimes. Right, Dave? So I'd also like to touch on the returning officer's report. As you're aware, there was a fire on September 24th on the adjoining building. Initially, it didn't look like the returning officer was going to be displaced. For cleaning purposes, he was displaced, thanks to our manager of IT, to the deputy clerk, to the manager of recreation for finding a place to relocate him in the recreation center. That is where his services will remain until October 18th. The election at the fire hall is scheduled for the 19th. And all staff and materials are in place. So if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer it, but I think I hit on everything that was in his report. So.
No questions on the returning officer report? All right, CAO.
I'd ask Alicia to come forward and present on 3 of her initiatives, just providing council with an update.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Yes, to Jeff's point there, we are just giving you updates tonight on a few projects that have been in front of you, just so you know where we're at in the progress. First, we're going to talk about the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, or the CHIF. This is a new fund that we talked about at last CAC when we were speaking about the Housing Accelerator Fund application, Housing Accelerator Fund 2.0. And when staff provided that, or prepared that application, we were really trying to look at not only the CMHC 10 best practices, the national housing strategy, as well as this fund in particular, because it is designed for funding for stormwater management projects, wastewater projects, which is sometimes harder funding to secure, especially since this fund was tied to new housing growth, or if there's housing growth within your community, which we know is coming forward within Kentville. And if we do continue with the development of the connector road, this is a really big funding opportunity for us over the next few years. Since the September CAC, we've attended more information sessions, and more information has been released about the fund, so we wanted to make sure council was up to date. The biggest piece we want to speak to is in regards to the 4 units as of right across the municipality. Originally, when looking at this fund, it was stated as an eligibility requirement that in order to apply, you had to have put in action that you would look to do that across your municipality. Information has now come forward that that is only applicable to municipalities that are above 30,000 in a population. So we would be considered the rural stream under 30,000 for our population. So it is not now required to apply, and the federal government has confirmed that it also doesn't add merit. If you do it in a rural area, it won't be held as more points or whatnot. It was still submitted within the HAF application as it is recommended within the 10 best practices, but at this stage we wanted to update council. It will be the decision of the incoming council on whether or not they sign a contribution with CMHC for the Housing Accelerator Fund 2.0 based on the initiatives that have been submitted in September for the Housing Accelerator Fund. And as of right now, there's no update from CMHC on when we'd hear back, but it would be within the new term of council. I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you very much, Alicia, for that fulsome report. Are there any questions with regards to this report? All right, on to your next.
Amazing. Here we go. The next one we're speaking to tonight is the rural tax rate. I'm going to double check I have my order. Yes, okay, good to go. This is just a quick update for council. Just as we know, this has been in front of you on multiple occasions. You can see under the related reports there, it's been in front of you multiple times. Definitely speaks to the complexity of rurality and when you're a mix of rural, urban, and navigating the MGA, but overall, similar to the previous reports, we're still in conversation with the province of what it looks like and conversations around that the base residential tax rate for our community. But it has been confirmed since making this report that if we are looking at different reimbursements per se, that the Municipal Grants Act would not intersect with this, that's completely fine. It doesn't impact that decision, but we're going to continue to be in conversation with the province and our solicitor as well on what that would look like moving forward, and we will continue to bring updates with the incoming council.
All right, thank you very much for that report. Not the news I wanted, but.
I know. I see you have multiple RFDs there, Sandra. I'm so sorry.
I've been beating down CAO's desk since 2016 on that one, but that's not an issue. You know, we have rules, and this is one of our rules. But I thank you so much for doing all that legwork on this, and at least now I have an answer for the folks that live up on Harrington Road, and it's not the answer that either of us wanted, but we are where we are, and knowing you, I know that you will not stop pursuing this until we get the answer that we want. So I will leave that in your capable hands, and it looks like there's no questions on the matter. So on to the next one.
Amazing. This is another update regarding the minimum standards bylaw repeal and replace. This was motioned in September regarding Chapter 41, Town of Kentville's housing and minimum standards bylaw. Really, that was brought forward as the bylaw needed some general updates, even just in terms of matching the language to what we see across Nova Scotia in terms of definitions, what do things mean, and where responsibility lies, and a clear process of what enforcement would look like, especially from a community member's perspective, so they understand what we would go through. There is a list of example updates there that we will continually review, but at this time the CAO has a copy of the first draft, and this is another project that we'll work with the solicitor as well moving forward, where it's a bylaw, and that will come in front of the new council as well. But at this stage, wanted to give you talking points of what's being updated if community members are seeking clarity.
All right, thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions for Alicia, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Alicia, when the comment there, completing a jurisdictional scan of existing municipal standard. So with regards to the housing and minimum standard bylaw that we have now, in your, I'll call it research.
Sure.
Are you seeing other ones in other municipalities that are vastly different than what we have with ours?
That's a good question. It depends, I would say. There's a lot of similarities in certain sections and some variances in others, and really where we see the variances are the ones who've been updated in the last maybe 5 years. Okay. And a lot of the variance is in language and in definition is the biggest piece. And I would say where you either see exactly the same wording or very different wording is around that lawns and grounds section that I know council wanted to have under review. There's one section within the MGA that's sort of a copy and paste that you can pull into that section, or you can have more robust. So you really see that MGA or a very robust section. That's where you see the biggest differences. And then as well, again, in definitions, coming back to the lawns and grounds, is that one's sort of the most subjective, where a lot of other things are noted in the National Building Code, but that one's more subjective per municipality. In comparison, nationally, very different in other provinces. There are a few other municipalities that are starting to separate their lawns and grounds outside of a minimum standard. So you have your housing minimum standards and then a lawns. Okay. It's not very common, but you see it more in other provinces. But at this stage, it doesn't seem like that would be a need for us, that it would still work within this minimum standards process.
Okay, great, thank you.
The biggest thing is that we have the title housing and minimum standards. Majority are just minimum standards bylaw. So the update is with that updated title as well, just for clarity, especially for community members if they're moving from various jurisdictions. It's just more clear.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Alicia, for this. I just want to make sure that this new bylaw is going to target dumping in subdivisions of yard waste and things like that from outside of the subdivision. So bringing stuff in and dumping it on a property or whatever. So does the lawns and grounds section of that target that?
There is a bit more clarity around that language and a bit more definition as well. Our current bylaw can be, like we've said earlier, a bit subjective, so hopefully these definitions will provide us more clarity when talking to community members as well. And also some acknowledgement just around, there's a lot of language of like nuisance weeds as a word or whatnot, but there's also opportunity within this bylaw to have conversations with community members of, especially as we age in place, like what is our capability and what can we care for, that we want to make sure the standards can also be flexible based on what we're physically able to do as well. So yeah, hopefully there will be more definitions within that, and I feel confident that we have that moving forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Are there any further questions for Alicia on the reports that she has provided us with? Thank you.
Amazing.
All right, staff reports have been presented and they're now part of the record of this meeting. Staff, thank you very much for your reports and your attendance. I understand that some of you are hanging out for further business, but otherwise, thank you. So under unfinished business, we do have one motion to make before we receive the report from the planning department. And at CAC had a request from the COGS development to rezone PID 552666134 from medium density R3 to high density R4 to permit the development of anywhere between 30 and 60 units on the property. The request was supported by C&D planning report to council, and at the public participation meeting on Tuesday, the 3rd of September, there was ambiguity with the interpretation of the number of units permitted on an R3 lot. The September 6th CAC laid the first reading on the table pending more information from staff. So council, we now have a motion that CAC take from the table the motion to uphold the development officer's decision to grant site plan approval. If someone could move that, please. And this is only so we get the discussion. We're not moving first reading here. Thank you, Councillor Young. York. Yep. Oh my God, that's a Freudian. Councillor Gerard, did I hear you for the second? Yes. Thank you. The question is, this is not a debatable motion. The question is to take from the table the motion to recommend first reading to council on the application for PID 552666134 to rezone the parcel from medium density residential R3 to high density residential R4. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. All right. The floor is yours, Director Shoup.
That's okay. All right, just to give a quick timeline to bring us all back up to date where this application has moved through different stages. It was originally introduced at the CAC back on July 25th. Public participation meeting was held on September 3rd, and then, as the mayor mentioned, at September 6th, it was then tabled. We're looking at a conflict that we've had between our consulting planner. I'm going to be presenting a variety of interpretations here. And as well as we got a third-party opinion from Upland. We had the sort of the background from Kirsten Duncan on how staff has interpreted this in the past, and as well with Ben Kroll, now here as development officer, his interpretation of what is basically a question of density in the R3 zone. So what we tried to do with the staff report is to kind of contrast R4 and R3. There's some different language that's in the land use bylaw on how density is considered going forward or within each of those zones. With R4, we used an example based on what has been already, sorry, I'm getting those ones confused. So the R4 is more straightforward in terms of having number of units per square feet as written into the land use bylaw. So it's an easier calculation to make, and I should say off the top that these are calculations that have been made by staff without a full design process that the applicant would go through to bring these forward. So these are fairly quick calculations without the ability to get full detail because we don't have that information. So it's mostly just based on square feet, not on the actual land itself. And the number that we came up with, and I remember this question was also asked at the public participation meeting when people were trying to figure out what could actually be achieved here. And it was difficult to come to that conclusion at that meeting, just based on there's different factors that are involved when you work out how you can develop a parcel of land. But based on mostly just the rough square footage, we have on the report that it would be 86 units in total that could be developed under R4, which equates to 43 units per acre based on the size of that lot. And I'll note here also that for a proper development to be designed, such things that are listed in land use bylaw, including yard setbacks, separation distances between buildings, parking requirements, amenity space requirements, and other environmental constraints would be considered before, and may reduce that 86. The lot itself is also an unusual shape, so that would also factor into how it could be developed. Let's make sure I get everything here. So again, compare and contrast the R4 zone, which has a fairly straightforward calculation, with what we could look at in R3, and that's where we get to the interpretation question that council had asked. Under the R3, I've listed 4 main points here. That there's more than one building is permitted on a lot, so consider that. Multiple unit dwellings up to 8 units are permitted currently as a permitted use. The minimum lot area for multi-unit dwelling, you have to have at least 10,000 square feet to have that considered. And the minimum lot frontage for multi-unit dwelling is 100 feet. So by again, this comparison scenario that we were developing, looking at what's already been developed on Hebrew Court, roughly in a provided diagram there that gave some rough square footage calculations for that, about 12,500 square feet for each of those current 8-unit buildings that are being developed along the south side of Hebrew Court. We applied that across the R3 as well. Just make sure I get my numbers right here. And that's where we came up with, again, factoring that this unusual shaped lot with different considerations that we get 6 or 7 of those buildings could fit potentially in that. It may be less than that, but that would be 48 to 56 units or 24 to 28 units per acre. So just to demonstrate the difference in density by the way we calculated it. So that was the 2 scenarios that we put together. Going back to the core issue that was brought up by council and by the public at that meeting as well, and it was demonstrated at the meeting, the public meeting, where we had a difference of opinion between planners and staff at that meeting, so that where C&D had suggested that the maximum permissible with 100-foot frontage was 1 8-unit multi-unit dwelling. The traditional interpretation from staff had been that you could do multiple buildings with 100 square feet with those other considerations that would keep the density in check. Again, Upland, when we went to the third party, had a similar opinion as what staff had interpreted in the past. The R3 zone, the language in the for the R3 zone is a little looser, and again, contrasting with the R4 where there's actual square footage per unit calculations provided, that we don't have that. We don't have that for the R3, so there's more room for interpretation within that. So all this being said, that we've had new development officer come on board, tried to keep him as bias-free as possible as has done his own interpretation of this. And if Ben's okay with coming forward, perhaps you can just step them through what you based your interpretation on. Okay. It's good to get your face over here too.
Hello. So it was, this is a tricky one. So the medium density residential zone, the R3 zone, well, it is pretty broad and open to interpretation. So, that could be good, could be a bit advantageous, but it also presents challenges when determining appropriate density regulation requirements, and, for instance, how many buildings are allowed on the lot. So, let's compare to the R4 zone, where the R4 zone has much more clearer directions and regulations on the amount of units that is allowed on a lot based off the square footage. Well, the R3 doesn't have that per se. So then you have to ask yourself, well, what is the intent of the R3 zone? The R3 zone is medium density. Well, what is medium density? And so let's say, I guess I can name because you said CND. So CND said 1 8-unit building on 10,000 square foot, with your 100 foot, so it's just one building. Okay, well, calculate the medium density. What does that mean? And it's not medium density. So I did a little bit of research. I looked at other land use bylaws of surrounding municipalities, towns, and oddly enough, they were pretty broad as well. They did focus more on the format of the housing, so more townhouses, let's say, or stacked townhouses, and then looking at their regulations, they're smaller, easier to comply with, but didn't really give a number, except for Wolfville. I did stumble across Wolfville's, and they did actually give a number for medium density. And I sort of forget exactly what it was, but it was a range. So I think it was 11 to 13 units per acre. So that's how you calculate density, is the amount of units per acre. So with that, and looking at our land use bylaw, looking at the housing crisis, and looking at the state of where we are, but also realizing that we're Kentville. We're not HRM, we're not Toronto, we're Kentville. I just bumped that number slightly to 15 units per acre. And I thought that was a very appropriate interpretation of medium density. So with that said, you're still allowed multiple 8-unit buildings on a single lot as long as it meets the intent of that zone, which is medium density, which is, give or take, approximately what I believe 15 units per acre is. I think that's a good summary of how I came up. But I will say, sorry, that it's not also just the frontage and square footage as well, because by the time when you put a building, a multi-unit building that has 4 or more units, you need to consider amenity spaces, you need to consider parking. And if you have multiple buildings, there is a minimum, I believe it's 20 feet, a minimum of 20 feet between buildings. So when you address and review all of that, that also takes a big say in calculating a medium density as well. It's not that you can just have build and build and build and build and build in. There are other requirements and regulations that need to be followed as well.
Thank you, Ben. So again, just trying to give council the sort of the range of opinions that and interpretations that have come in on this R3 zone, with the goal of, I think we're trying to contrast what can be achieved in R4 versus what can be achieved in R3 on this particular lot to allow you to make decisions going forward on this particular application. So I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up on, hopefully wasn't too complicated of a description.
All right, Director, I'm going to say I dumbed it down here and made my notes. So in the application, the proposal is the property in question is currently medium density residential, and I'm reading from the original, and abuts additional R3 properties, and what they are looking for is a single-story walk-up building with 50 to 60 units placed in the front of the lot that would be most appropriate. And there was a picture that it was this little L-shaped building. And what they're asking for is 50 to 60 under R4. But when I look at what you have told us, and if I go up to page 3 of 6, and the top paragraph tells me that they could do 6 to 7 buildings with 8-unit apartments achieving 48 to 56 units. So they could have more buildings on the lot and still achieve the density that they're looking for under their current as a right.
Hypothetically.
Okay, hypothetically. However, what they're asking for is a single building with, again, 50 to 60 units, but they want us to uptick it to R4 zoning, and they have, if we went to R4, they could actually double their number of units, which is not part of their proposal. But if we give them R4, are they tied to what they've asked for, or do they now get to have what they can build as a right?
The application for rezoning, the examples that they've given in their application are for concept only.
Okay,
So the final design would come at a later date.
okay. All right, that was my dumbing it down, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. On that piece of property, there would have to be a road going up to it, right? And then right behind, or to the right of that, or to the left of that road would be all R1 housing. And we're looking at a piece of land, and we're saying it abuts R3, but actually it abuts R1. And the whole area is basically R1, other than what's below them, right? So we are supposed to look at the impact to the area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, what they could build is a long strip motel that runs all the way across that road with single units, drive-up single units, right?
Well, they do, I'm not sure if the councillor's thinking of the current townhouse design that they have on Hebrew Court.
Yeah.
Under R3, they'd be able to design a similar. They haven't.
But if they want more units, they wouldn't be able to build the townhouse type of design, because they would have to have somebody on the bottom, somebody on the top, somebody in the middle, right? So they would be better to just string a long building like a motel and have one drive up, or they could put a motel style with a top floor, right? Or a third floor.
Just to remind council that I'm not a site designer. We have some maximums that would be permitted, which we've demonstrated through the R3 and the R4 zones. The number of units wouldn't change based on the format that they chose.
Right. But as a councillor, I'm supposed to also look at the impact to the area.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
For clarification, I understand what the councillor has said, the nice long building with multiples. But if it is one building, under our current R3, it can't have more than 5 or 8 units. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So we couldn't go up and down. Like, it couldn't be a 3-story long building because you couldn't have 8 stories on the bottom, 8 stories in the middle, and 8 stories on top, right?
Not in a single building.
Okay,
That's what I
so
understand.
we still have to go with the separate buildings to achieve the density, the most density that they can under an R3.
It'd be multiple 8-unit buildings. Yeah.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I think my question is going to be pretty easy. Thank you, Mayor. I think for me, anyway, it comes back to, in our land use bylaw and our MPS, what is our intent of an R3? So I was just asking Councillor Maxwell how many units are on that PID now? And what did you say, through the chair?
5 along Hebrew Court Road.
Okay.
I think they're building 5.
Okay, so if it stays R3, then my understanding is that they could have 5 to 8 units for every 10,000 square feet. They could have 5 to 8 units for every 10,000 square feet.
Would that just,
With a minimum lot
Chair,
frontage
yeah.
of 100 feet, give or take.
No, they can have multiple buildings with 100 front footage, based on what Ben presented as an
Yep,
interpretation.
that's what I mean, those,
Yeah.
but those buildings can only be from 5 to 8 units, correct?
Under R3, yeah.
Under R3, okay. So how many more, let's say they're buildings of 5. How many more buildings of 5 could they have on that lot? Roughly.
It's really hard for me to come to that exact number. Again, they still have to meet all the other requirements in terms of parking, amenities. There's likely a driveway, as Councillor Maxwell had mentioned, that would be required to get to the interior of this property.
Right,
So all those would reduce the amount of actually developable space.
okay.
And it's hard for me to give you a reliable number on that off the top of my head.
But certainly, if it stays R3, it would be less density than if it went to R4, correct? Yes. Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
That
that's
should
good.
be, through the chair, the original question was regarding the intent of the MPS into
Right.
with medium density. And that should be the intent, is that you would have a lesser density than what you could achieve in the high density. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just remind council that on page 3, the first paragraph, it says, based on existing 8-unit apartment site design, it is reasonable to assume that up to 6 to 7 buildings could be designed to fit on the lot, yielding 48 to 56 units, or 24 to 28 units per acre. So I think that would be our R3 max, and then our R4 would be 86 units in total, or 43 units per acre. That was for Council Maxwell.
Yeah, I'm just, also, on that piece of land, the way it's shaped and everything, there is supposed to be green space dedicated to recreation there. How much of that land is going to be used for green space?
My understanding is that when there's a larger lot that was subdivided into probably 5 or 6 different smaller parcels, and that the parkland dedication was taken out during that subdivision process. So it's, and I don't know my civic numbers very well on Hillcrest. But I believe if that's 25, it's the isolated R1 surrounded by the R3. So it's just to the west of that is the parkland dedication, to my understanding.
And how much of the total amount of land are they looking at that's going to be parkland? Do we know?
It's 5%. That's 5%, which would have been subtracted for that dedication at the time of subdivision.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Are there any other questions, Council?
It's not a question, but you're the David Bell tonight.
I'm going to take that as a big compliment. Thank you. All right, well, we do have a recommendation from our staff and from the original report that we give first reading to this. So the motion that would be on the table is that CAC recommend first reading to council at the October 28th meeting of council on the application for PID 552-66134 to rezone the parcel from medium-density residential R3 to high-density residential R4. Someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And for the second? Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend first reading to council at the October 28th meeting of council on the application of PID 552-66134 to rezone the parcel from medium-density residential R3 to high-density residential R4. Is there any further discussion on this matter? And council, this is only a recommendation to council, and if it were to pass on at the end of October, the public hearing and all matters would be taken up by the new council. So that for your information. Is there any further questions for the director or discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on recommendation to give first reading to council at the October 28th meeting of council on the application for PID 552-66134 to rezone the parcel from medium-density residential R3 to high-density residential R4. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. All right, we have five items of correspondence. Is there any discussion on any of those or questions from council on those matters? Thank you, Ben. I hope we treated you well for your first time up front. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, no questions on the correspondence. We have no new business this evening. So we will move on to public comment. Members of the public are invited to speak to council on any agenda item. You will be provided with 3 minutes to speak. And please provide your name and general address prior to speaking. CAO, would you be the timekeeper on the 3 minutes?
I'd be happy to be the timekeeper.
Thank you. All right, we have no public comments, so we'll move on directly to our in-camera. The council has confidential labor matters which must be conducted in a closed session, and we require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda item. Councillor York and Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into the closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into the closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And the time is 7:17.